Welcome back to Bullet Recap. Today we'll be diving into a dystopian movie named Eagle Eye. Enjoy the recap. The movie kicks off with two kids playing with each other. Three vans simultaneously drive on the street, and the US Army are alerted to a high-value target on the move. Their drone gets a visual for the command base, and Defense Senator Collister arrives immediately as they try to verify their high-level target. Based off the voice, it is only a 37% possibility it's him. It goes up to 51% and is recommended to abort. Their drone picks up facials, and the biometrics comes up to 51% possibility as well. With time ticking, it seems to be a funeral, and the president calls in and is alerted to the situation, as well as the 51% possibility. Even though Collister says to not go ahead, the president says otherwise, and the weapons have been engaged. Within seconds, they fire missiles with 10 seconds until impact. There are many civilians nearby, and boom. Elsewhere, Jerry Shaw plays a game with his mates, but they are hesitant to play with him as he keeps taking their money. He makes this mad motivational speech, and they fall for the trap. He wins the money, and simultaneously, he is told the break is over, and it's time to get back to work inside a printing facility. After work, the news is alerting people to how the FBI listens to everything people do on their phones, even if it is switched off. No one really cares, and Jerry proceeds to withdraw some money and heads back home. Inside, he is quickly approached by the tenant and pays up part of what he owes her. He then receives a phone call by his mom and is told some bad news. He immediately makes his way to a funeral, and everyone stares at him. He looks at the corpse and cries at the loss of his beloved twin brother. Later on, his dad approaches him and wants to know where he's been for 6 months. Seems Jerry has a child in Alaska, to which his father is clearly disappointed in him. They argue with one another, and the scene cuts to a woman named Rachel. She takes her son Sam to the station where she sees her ex-husband. She says goodbye to her son, who is headed on a trip, and then walks off. A man then named Ronham says on a microphone he found the bag and takes it. Back with Jerry, he goes to withdraw some more money and sees his balance as $751,000. He immediately withdraws, and the ATM starts printing notes like crazy. He takes what he can and runs off back to his home, to which he is told that some men in suits were in his apartment. He gives her rent for 2 months in advance and walks into his room to see weapons, military-grade attachments, and poisons. He is very confused as he then discovers multiple fake passports of his name. He gets a phone call, and a woman says the FBI is arriving in 30 seconds and he must run. He panics and pleads until the FBI come racing in and start belting him. He is arrested and put into questioning. Agent Thomas Morgan questions Jerry, who is beyond confused. Thomas asks how long it's been since he has seen his now deceased brother. Turns out it's been over 3 years, and Thomas makes him understand he is under suspicion of terrorism. Thomas continues by saying they found plane manuals and the latest military equipment, as well as the money in his account. Jerry pleads that it's not him, but Thomas is heedless and walks out. Back to Rachel. She is hanging out with her friends the night as her son is not with her. Simultaneously, her son calls her, and she walks away to take the call. A woman answers her and says to look at the TV across the street, to which she sees her son on it. The woman also says she's been activated, and she is to go to a Porsche with keys in the ignition. Rachel calls up the cops, and the call cancels, and the woman says her phone is being monitored. In the meantime, Agent Thomas is approached by Zoe Perez, who is part of the Air Force Special Investigation Unit. She speaks on Jerry's twin brother and how he died via a truck accident. Zoe says it feels too coincidental and may be a decoy. The security cameras inside then zoom on a piece of paper being printed, which authorizes Jerry to a phone call. And that's exactly where he goes. The other two agents bicker, and Zoe wants to interrogate Jerry, but Thomas says no. In the meantime, Jerry gets called by the same woman as before, who tells him to lay flat on the floor as a crane breaks the building apart. He is told to jump and gets shot at, so that's exactly what he does. On the run, he is left with no other alternative but to listen to the signs and board the train. A man's phone next to him rings, and he picks up the phone, and the woman gives him directions to head to. He doesn't listen, and the woman threatens him and slams the train's brakes and puts it in reverse. He still refuses, and she turns everyone in the station against him, which forces him to escape and run on the street. He goes inside the car where he's directed to, and Rachel is inside and thinks he is the one doing everything and fights with him until she realizes he's not the one. The woman says to drive, and a cop chase immediately ensues. The woman gives them exact directions to head to, and Thomas and Zoe join the chase. She tells them to accelerate and changes the lights, which causes a cop car to flip. The lights are helping them out until they start smacking up against cop cars. Zoe fires shots, and the woman tells them to slam the brakes, which causes more collisions. They then approach a busy highway, and the brakes stop working. Thomas isn't scared though and keeps his speed until they reach the highway and are all clobbered in the process, but the woman takes control of the vehicle and gets them out of the immediate danger. 3 cop cars are still following them, but the cops begin getting picked off one by a claw until they are brutally killed. The claw then picks up Rachel and Jerry and yanks them until they are on top of a boat. The duo jumps out and lands safely as the car is thrown into the water. The police arrive and believe the duo have drowned with the vehicle. The following morning, the car is pulled from the water, and Thomas wants an ID on the girl. The duo trip out on how the lights and rails were controlled by this mysterious woman, and she then calls Jerry. She directs him to head to a specific address. Elsewhere, in the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, the men there have discovered an explosive 80 times more powerful than C4. It is also stealthier and is activated by sound. They have been given approval to ship the item to the field, but their system glitches and sends the package to Hassad Instruments. The woman is on the line with Ronham and is told to remove a valve and follow her instructions precisely. Another man speaking to the woman is told to cut the stone and put it as a necklace. In the meantime, Rachel and Jerry speak, and Rachel believes all this is because of Jerry's deceased brother. Jerry finds out she's a paralegal, and a van drives behind them. Out steps Ronham, who loses it at the two and says he will no longer do the woman's bidding and hands them a paper and his keys. He walks off and the woman tells Jerry to stop him, but it's too late. The power line snaps and fall right onto Ronham and instantly kills him. She then immediately tells Jerry to drive to Indianapolis, Indiana. Zoe in the meantime arrives at an Air Force base where Jerry's brother was assigned to. While this happens, Thomas finds Ranham's dead body and his ID. Zoe then locates a bag and pulls out a laptop, while Thomas discovers a military-grade mic in Ranham's ear and knows that is impossible to have. Zoe simultaneously discovers a device, and when she plugs it in, she sees something named Eagle Eye but wants a login. She enters the wrong password, and the Department of Defense tracks the computer and shuts it down. Within minutes, cars pull up in front of her and they tell her to get in. Back to the main duo. They drive towards Indianapolis, and Rachel mentions how this is all Jerry's brother's fault. Jerry loses it and parks the car underneath a bridge and chucks Rachel the keys before storming off. She confronts him and apologizes, saying she needs him. This is enough to get him back to the van, where they arrive at their destination and are told to go to an alley. The woman wants them to rob a guard arriving with a suitcase in 15 seconds, and they both quickly lock and load. They then hold the armed men hostage and steal a case off them and run off. The guards then chase them, and the sprinklers go off in all surrounding buildings, which causes a big enough distraction for the duo to run in the crowd. They are pursued on foot, and a sign tells Jerry and Rachel where to go. Out of nowhere, a bus pulls up, and a woman on a phone tells them both to come in. They head inside the private bus and sit down, but Jerry spots a timer on the case, and that's no good. Zoe in the meantime heads to the Pentagon, where she speaks with Collister. He tells her there is an imminent attack, and have received over 200 threats since Jerry's brother died, and wants her help. She is then introduced to Major William and Eagle Eye. The duo meanwhile are sent to a festival and told to get new clothes, but Jerry wants to see them in person. The woman says okay and tells him where to go. They head to a TV store, and the monitors light up around them. They begin going over Jerry's life and have monitored everything he has ever done. They use this data to create personality profiles for the duo. The woman then begins reciting core American statements and values, and the duo realize the woman is an AI. Zoe is then introduced to the artificial intelligence, which is named Aria, a machine that watches all raw intel to the smallest of details. Collister tells Aria to help Zoe in her investigation, to which it analyzes her. She then gets an emergency threat detection and does her own thing. Aria tells Jerry she uses him so he could conform, and William tells Zoe that Jerry's brother checked out 3 minutes early from watching Aria, which could never happen. Aria explains to Jerry his life and his brother's, how Jerry could never keep up with him, how Jerry was identical yet different and lacked motivation. She tells them to change up and get to the bus immediately. But as Rachel changes, Aria tells her she wants her to do something for her if she wants to see her son again. Jerry also finishes up changing, and Aria threatens Rachel and ends the call. Thomas, still looking for answers, finds out that the duo are not professionals. He also finds out all the cameras went black during the robbery, but finds a store that doesn't have cameras on the network. He takes the footage to his team, who immediately spot Jerry on the cameras as well as the bus they escaped on. Back on the bus, Rachel apologizes for bringing up Jerry's brother before. But Jerry gets quite emotional and speaks on how much his brother used to help him. They then arrive at an international airport and are handed passports. Thomas is on to them though and goes to block off the exits. The duo now try and bypass security even with the case they have. It gets flagged, but Aria sorts it out for them, and they manage to pass through. And boom, Thomas spots them, and a chase ensues. Aria directs them to a gate to take, and they go through an emergency exit which is then locked. The two then use this small head start to run and try to evade capture, but problematically, they drop the case and then jump on the belt to grab it. Thomas fires at them and uses this distraction to also jump on the belt line. Jerry then holds Thomas at gunpoint, and Aria moves him away from them. She directs the duo to where she wants and says go to cargo plane 3. That's exactly where they head to and board the plane. Aria tells them to set the briefcase down and the timer hits 0 and the case opens to 2 guns and 2 vials. She tells them to load up the items and use it on themselves. This will lower their heart rates and reduce the amount of oxygen needed. They do it and get inside a crate that closes on them while the plane takes off, and Thomas wants to know where that plane is headed. Jerry tries to calm down Rachel by speaking of Sam as well as her ex-husband. She ends up falling asleep, and the scene jumps to William asking Aria to bring up how Jerry's brother left 3 minutes early that day. Zoe notices something odd, and they see how the now-deceased brother was using his phone for Morse code. William begins writing down the letters, and Aria says that the file is corrupted, and she wipes it out. Zoe tells William to calm down, and they slowly head to the fire extinguisher that Jerry's brother wrote, and where Aria cannot see. Zoe discovers a memory card for a cell phone, and they plug it in to see Jerry's brother arguing with Aria. In the meantime, the duo land, and they hide only to realize they are inside the Pentagon. Simultaneously, Zoe contacts Thomas and tells him all about Jerry's brother as well as what she found out. Aria jams the call, and Thomas lands the chopper at the Pentagon. Rachel and Jerry are inside an elevator, and Zoe wants to speak to the defense secretary immediately. Aria listens in on the conversation, and William rips out the phone. It tries to listen in at any means necessary, but Collister hears Aria saying,
"Whenever any form of government becomes destructive, the right of the people to abolish it."
Aria uses the vibration of water to listen in, and the recording also hears Aria activating Operation Guillotine to remove the government, as she believes they are not fit and did not listen to her abort recommendation. It also tells Jerry's brother he is an enemy of the state, and the recording ends. Turns out a couple days ago, they were incorrect about their intel and killed innocent victims for no reason. The other two inside the building end up on an empty level. Thomas meanwhile tells the men he needs access to the 36th floor immediately, but while this happens, Aria intentionally takes out the guard watching her, allowing the other two access to her. Zoe discovers that Jerry's brother put a biometric lock on Aria to stop her, and that's the whole purpose of Jerry. Aria asks him to approach the biometric scanner, and it scans his body all over as Rachel grabs a gun from the downed guard. The others meanwhile go to activate an emergency lockdown, and Aria locks the secretary inside, jams all communications, and attacks the other two, but William manages to escape underground. The scanner finishes, and Jerry is told to repeat a phrase and he is free. He does so, and Operation Guillotine is a go. 12 men then appear on the list, which includes the president. She plans to kill them all, and Jerry realizes his brother's death was no accident. Rachel then aims a gun at him as he could reactivate the lock. Sam is then played in the background, and Jerry understands and tells Rachel to shoot him. Aria gets irritated, and Rachel says she cannot do it. Thomas then makes his way in the room and aims his gun at Jerry. But Rachel is no longer with him. She is escorted by a man who says to not speak and drives away. Thomas is then told about the missing explosive crystal and that it was sent to the dead man underneath the wires. Jerry wants to speak to Thomas and has a change of heart as he helps him escape. Rachel then takes a photo with the man and grabs a visitor pass. At the Union Station, Sam's bag stolen from earlier is given back to him, and it turns out that Sam's field trip was to the White House. Rachel is then handed clothes to change, and the man walks away from her. Seems that Thomas let Jerry escape and wants to know exactly what's going on. Aria isn't happy to see this and wants them dead. It activates a drone on its own, and the military try to take it down, but it ejects the pilot and fires a missile right next to Jerry and Thomas. Jerry quickly makes it out and helps Thomas to do the same. They hijack someone else's car and head inside a tunnel. The drone follows them inside and shoots a rocket that hits a truck and causes a massive accident. Thomas hands his badge to Jerry and says a route to get into the White House and alert the president. He also hands him his gun and tells him to go. The drone comes back, and Thomas sacrifices himself to save Jerry and destroy the drone. Jerry cannot believe it, but he can do nothing. While all this happens, the necklace covered as an explosive is put on by Rachel. Sam and his friends also arrive at the White House, and Jerry makes a run for it. Rachel walks inside, and a woman says she will take her to her seat. Collister then asks Aria why he was spared, and she explains it's because he listened to her abort recommendation and no one else did. William and Zoe begin ripping whatever they can to harm her. Jerry arrives at the White House and uses the fake ID to enter. Turns out that when Ronham stole Sam's bag at the station, Aria had someone put the sound activation key for the bomb planted inside his musical instrument set to go off at a specific pitch. Rachel is ushered to her seat in the House and the president's cabinet enter. Jerry runs through the hallways and gets into a fight with a guard as the president enters the building. Zoe has almost managed to cause some data corruption, but Aria begins uploading her memory to a remote satellite and attacks her intruders. Zoe then cracks Aria in her main body and the lights go out and the data stops at 27%, but Operation Guillotine was still uploaded. Jerry meanwhile sprints towards the president, who gives a speech. Rachel sits idly by, not knowing her necklace can kill everyone in a football stadium radius. She then spots Sam and runs towards him. Sam and his class begin playing a musical, with the end to set off an explosion. Jerry reaches the house and Rachel is tackled down. Jerry fires shots in the air to stop the musical but is also shot. Sam is pulled away and Jerry stops moving on the ground. He remembers his childhood as a news voiceover says there are still no suspects involved with the assassination attempt. And the scene cuts to Callister saying Aria has been decommissioned. He gets emotional and says a great loss of lives has happened from their mistakes, and they must learn from this ordeal. Jerry is still alive and is handed a medal beside his father for both he and his brother. After quite some time, Sam seems to know who Jerry is as he buys him a gift for his birthday. Rachel is quite happy to see him, and that's the end. Make sure to smash that subscribe button and I'll catch you on the next one.